Brothers of the degrees, may I speak to you this night and remind you of the scarab with the beetle and the wall. May I remind you of the wall as opposition, and may I remind you of the beetle before the wall as an ongoing creature, one who recognizes the need to proceed forward into light, out of darkness. I am Serapis, and the seriousness of the business of the ascension is all engrossing to the soul, who understands immediately that he has also constructed the wall of opposition in part by his own thoughts and desires, by his own fear of failure, and by his own recognition of the synthetic patterns which he has allowed to mold him and shape him according to the human monadic image, without understanding the need to be fashioned in the likeness of God from the center of being, from the core of being, and from the very flame within his heart. Life is geometric. It is an orderly and progressive activity intended in its very ongoingness to convey each person from one point to another, and that always in a forward movement when one gauges the whole pattern of a lifetime. I am deliberately tonight speaking to you in a different manner in order to accommodate myself to the conditions here in Cairo, which you face where you do not have the largeness of a hall independent of prying eyes. Were I to release those torrents of energy in an outward manner, it might attract undue attention to you, which I do not wish to do. Therefore, I will speak to you tonight in a more softly modulated voice, but at inner levels, I will release those energy patterns and powers of light which are calculated to raise your consciousness into an awareness of who and what you really are. The brotherhood of life, the brotherhood of light, and the brotherhood of peace salute you. For in reality, whereas life seems at times to be anything but peace, at the center and depth of man's world, the peace of God abides within the heart of the flame. And this flame, in its brilliancy and its whiteness, releases the purity of the thought of God, not only into your own individual heart, but into each individual atom of your physical flesh form, into your brain, into your mind, into your hand, and into every atom of your being. Will you then tonight, as I am speaking to you, recognize this pattern and determine that nothing shall actually prevent the manifestation of the ascension flame from blazing in all parts of your being? Beloved hearts, when your whole thought is devoted to the Godhead at a given moment, it will bear fruit, whether or not that fruit is always naturally cognized by man through his own senses, which report to him what is taking place. Some of you, unfortunately, over the years, have not been able to release those centers of your being into activity, so that those centers of your being, which you refer to as chakras and sacred centers, could, as you would phrase it, open up or become sensitized to those higher vibrations which are indeed indicative of the vast power of God being released in your world. But, beloved hearts, it is important that you should understand that life is far greater than the mere phenomena of even the feeling of bliss and joy which descends upon many whose centers are opened, not only when we are speaking to you, but also when there is a great release of cosmic energy or the magnetization of the sacred fire by your own songs, by your own efforts, and by your own decree. Do you understand that? Do you understand that you, as well as we, are able to draw forth and magnetize cosmic energy? If you do understand it, you will see that whereas we step up the tempo from a smaller rate to a larger one, you are capable of the same thing, and one day will exercise that dominion over your own life, which will fulfill all cosmic ordinances in your world, along the path of completely entering in to the heart of the Godhead. Mankind today live on the periphery of divine experience, and yet still expect to enter into and to receive the abundance of the cosmic grace from the ascended master level. This can never be without the passing away of the former things, that all things may, quote, become new. It is too much for people to expect that they will not die to those things which they temporally live in, and then be resurrected into those things which are their own rightful and true domain. How silly it is, beloved hearts of light, that human beings seem to anticipate that they will always be involved in the similitude of man when they were created in the image of God. We wish to emphasize then those practical manifestations of life that will bear that cosmic fruit which every individual has a right to expect, the ritual of the ascension. You cannot possibly receive the ascension unless there is merit that you receive it. And how shall you receive merit, beloved hearts of light? Did God not intend the gift of the ascension for the whole world? Well then, why have they not received it when we have received it already? Simply because they have not readied or prepared themselves for the gift and its reception. We anticipate that you want to know the truth of your being and not to be fooled. How many people today are fooled by false premises, and then when they stand on what they term the other side of the gate of life, they find themselves rather shocked at their failure to develop in a whole lifetime what actually could have been developed in one day if they had only maintained their sincerity and then understood that it really was not a human effort after all, but a divine one, which ought to occupy the platform of their heart and mind. Now I know that when my voice has been used to emphasize these spiritual points, with a burst of cosmic energy to which I am accustomed. It has sometimes appeared to many as though I were being extremely harsh. Well, I do not wish to completely de-emphasize that phase of my release, for I must of necessity bring about that chastisement of the mortal consciousness which will allow the immortal beauties of universal loveliness to appear. For only then can the fruit of spiritual endeavor become a fait accompli. I want all to understand that here in Luxor, at spiritual levels, in the etheric realm where we hold control over those devotees in part who come to us for sacred instruction, that we must, if we are to shorten the days of their travail, for there are certain elements of travail, even when individuals have almost merited the ascension and then come to us in order to complete their training. It is not always, in all cases, that immediately upon passing through what might be called the portals of death, that individuals are able to enter at once into the fullness of immortal life. The novitiate of individuals has proceeded through the centuries, where while some come to us and in 24 to 48 hours receive the gift of the ascension, others spend many, many years here at Luxor in preparation for what some received within 24 to 48 hours. Do you understand then how important it is to each one of you that you give allegiance to your divine presence, not just in order that your presence might serve your temporal needs or supply you with some form of material healing whereby your physical body would be raised above the level of yesterday, but rather that you might also have a healing that would penetrate in depth the very soul of your being and remove the causes and the cores of the afflictions, whatever they might be. For unless there is a removal of the causes and the cores, mankind cannot expect that they will make the progress which they anticipate, and therefore the disappointment will be theirs. I do not say that your beloved El Moria, Saint Germain, your beloved Mother Mary, or any of the hosts of heaven for that matter, are themselves pleased when you fall short of the mark. And I want you to realize that all of us conspire together to raise you into those precious and priceless gifts which we long to bestow upon you. But if you were able to see how many individuals upon this planetary body embark upon the pathway of what has been called black magic, if you were able to see all of the Akashic records of Egypt as well as the rest of the world, you would understand that the root causes of all human bondage are the attempts and the actual manipulation of mankind by mankind. For this indeed creates a karmic record of tremendous depth that cuts very deep and requires a great deal of expiation of that karma. We want you then to understand that to practice as some do what has been called the black arts is truly the creation of elements of death and dying in consciousness, whereas it is the abundant life which we desire all men to espouse, and we desire them also to aspire to it. Will you understand then that your journey here to Egypt in itself could accomplish very little for you except some pleasant and unpleasant memories, unless there were an attendant activity within the mind and heart of your being, which would change so many things for you, not only this night, but for all time to come. How often do individuals sitting at our feet and in the retreats emphasize that when they heard us speak, they were imbued with feelings of great power and determination, and their hearts soared. afterwards, when they were asked what the Master said, they could not remember. And why was this? Why indeed? But simply because there was not that practical manifestation which we anticipate and which they ought also to do. Do you see then that the changes that we wish to create in you tonight are changes of God control? Control of your consciousness. Now, all of you at times will find that there are things that occur in your karmic patterns that are not to your liking. Well, what is it that I refer to when I say God control? I refer in particular to the fact that individuals in their own consciousness, because they cannot have what they want or their own way, are often prone to release great floods or tides of energy through their feeling world. This sometimes pours forth at others with whom they come in contact as feelings of resentment, of chastisement, and even of viciousness and malice. Well, I want you to understand that each such occasion can so very easily be seized by the dark forces as an opportunity for the dark forces of the whole wide world to pour their putrid energies through the consciousness of the discordant individual, thus creating a far larger karmic pattern than they had ever intended. And what is the strangest thing of all is that with the inflow of human putridness, with the inflow of darkness into that individual's world, simply because they open themselves up to it, there is immediately a terrific feeling that seizes them of resentment far greater than they had ever dreamed was possible. Well, when this happens, they are often quite shocked themselves to find that these things were taking place within the force field of their being. So what I want you to do, not only tonight, but for all time, is to promise your presence, not me tonight, but your God presence, that you will at least make a greater effort to exercise God control over your own feeling world and not respond to every activity that is directed against you by other human beings or by tramped thoughts that flow through your consciousness, which are actually an almost ceaseless stream of human nonsense, some of it not exactly pleasant when it is considered from the standpoint of purity. Do you understand what I am trying to do for you tonight? I am trying to make you aware of the fact that whenever you engage in the reception of tramp thoughts and the amplification thereof, then you see you are entering in to the admission of darkness, admitting it as a reality, when in God there is no darkness, but only light. But the moment that you endow life with the quality of darkness, you create it. And so it is the very consciousness of blessedness and grace and power and authority that mankind used to create darkness. Is this not strange, beloved hearts of light, that individuals in physical form, being given the great opportunity to scale cosmic heights, could allow themselves with the flick of an eye to descend into the mud and slime of human consciousness and human viciousness? Be on the lookout then for these conditions to give power to your world, to take power from your world, to both give and take. For they will give you negative energy and they will take from you positive energy. Who is the authority for your world? Are you not the authority for your world? Well then, beloved hearts, don't you think it is about time that you took dominion over that feeling world? For that is where, in most cases, it is all lost. Failures occur, and we do not expect that because failures occur that you shall say, I have failed. Not at all. we want you to understand tonight forever and forever and forever that failures are only a momentary falling short of a momentary mark. For life in its great transcendence is accessible to all of you. Even the great masters with whom I am associated recognize what has been called the veil of transcendence. The veil of transcendence means that there is always the masterful adventure appearing before all individuals who are less than the fullness of the Godhead, whereas the masters recognize that they are the fullness of the Godhead in the central essence and core of their being. As long as there is any individuality left at all, they cannot fully enter into the Godhead, for they are not yet willing to surrender all that is self to the selfless pattern of the universal. We recall one time when your own beloved Alpha, through the chain of cosmic command, released to us the knowledge that it was in the divine plan that man should hold his consciousness of individuality, providing he understood what was that individuality, a divine activity and not a human one, and that he should hold it until at last he would enter into the fullness of the Godhead by complete surrender of self, by becoming the allness of God. Most individuals upon earth have a subconscious fear that they will lose their identity, and this is why they are unwilling to surrender it. In reality, he who seeks to save his life will lose it, and he who loses it for the sake of heaven will find it again. This is what the Master meant when long ago he said almost those very words, expressly that very thought. Do you then understand how important it is that in your forward march you should govern your feelings? For then you will find that you will have an exercise over the mastery of thought. For when thought does not pull feelings into an elongated pattern where it loses its control, thought can also exercise mastery over feeling. And thought will thereby grow until, like a tall tree, like the cedars of Lebanon, it will point the way toward your own heaven of consciousness. And what is the heaven of consciousness? Oh, beloved hearts, it is the freedom from the fears and the oppressions and the shortcomings and the lack of all humanity. Why, when people come to us who have for years exercised a great prevailing power in prayer, whose lives are quite exemplary, you would be amazed at what happens to those individuals simply because they have failed to forfeit those human thoughts and feelings that sway them so easily. Thus, most magnificent people coming to our retreat are sometimes held in the junior classes and placed almost at the feet of the neophytes in order that they might make progress. I recall on several occasions when those of great prevailing power in prayer, of great spiritual power in prayer, of great devotion, having a magnificent karmic pattern, came to our retreat, quite humbly in fact, but then were a bit shocked when some of our workers took them by the hand and set them down in the first degree classes, even at the feet of the very beginners. For a moment, you might almost say that their countenance dropped, and it was as though they felt that they had lost all. But in reality, when they went through those early lessons and degrees of consciousness, I want to assure you that one by one they came to me and said, the very best thing that you ever recommended to us was the tending of our consciousness through the early classes, where at last we were schooled in the release into the flame of those unfortunate feelings of lack and distress, of fear that we would not accomplish, that we still had retained in spite of all of our prayer. For, beloved hearts of light, one of the greatest problems in heaven is the fact that so many good people insist on praying with their fears. They will pray with their fears rather than pray with their confidence. And therefore tonight I wish to imbue you with a more than ordinary amount of faith in the purity of the universal mind. I wish to impress upon you the importance of being kind. I want to raise you in consciousness above the level of the blind. Lo, I say unto you then, heed the words that make the most common sense. For in common sense, in simplicity, and in the explicit qualities of the law, you will find the most blessed accomplishments possible. I tell you tonight that those individuals who are afraid to be counted with the neophytes are those who hold their heads high. Many of us were told by our masters when we were taking our own novitiate that such were the stiff-necked individuals who were not able to relinquish themselves and thus could not receive the humility of God. What a pity, then, that men do not learn at an earlier age to govern their feelings. I will explain to you one of the factors involved in this. It is simply that even as children, mankind quickly learn how they can stir up a storm through human emotion patterns which they will exercise control over. They learn how to do it, and some spend a whole lifetime being schooled in how to stir up the emotions of others without ever learning how to control their own emotion. Now that I have told you this, I want to express to you again that you have builded the wall of your own opposition. And the law says that you must break the wall down. You must be the beetle on the scarab that crawls forward to this towering wall and then pushes that wall backwards, and then eventually create the hurdle that will lift you over the wall. And once it is behind you, I assure you that your progress into the light is your progress into the infinite. It is there already. Time is meaningless. It is like a river. It ever flows. But you will find yourself a part of the whole stream, not just of one position upon that stream. And because you are the source as well as the mouth of the river that meets the sea, you are all things to all people, and especially to yourself. For you will find the stream of selfhood flowing into God. Remember, hearts of light, that whereas simplicity is a key word, that the profundities of God stand behind simplicity. And when man is willing to accept the simple gifts, the great profundities will appear. The master teachers, with their wisdom, will cause the gleams of the sacred fire to indeed imbue each atom of the mind and of the soul with the realities which God has already placed there. If you lack comfort, let this be your comfort. God's hand has already placed the flame within you. It is simply up to you to will its expansion. And as you will its expansion, and you mount up on eagle wings of faith, you will find that expansion occurring, the miracle of the Sphinx riddle will come to your consciousness. You will see that man indeed has the strength of the lion because God is that strength. You will see that he can invoke the wings of the lion because God wants him to fly in consciousness and be raised. You will see that he has the face of beauty because the beauty which he retains is God's, and all share this beauty, uncommon in its rendering, yet common in its gift, bestowing upon all the teaching that of necessity the degrees appear. And when the degrees are mastered, what does the master do but return once again to the first degrees, to go again around the circle until at last the form controls the outer form. Because the form is the spirit now. Do you see? The spirit controls the outer form because that outer form has become the rote of spirit. For spirit imbues it with destiny, and destiny is fulfillment. You are here in Luxor, in consciousness. It is not necessary for you at this time to journey physically to Luxor, for I have drawn the flame of Luxor in its great splendid reality into the beauty of the heart of God within myself. And I am sending it as an essence into the flame of your heart. Tonight, while you sleep, you will receive, if you have the faith to receive it, a great portion of that flame. It will be according to your strength and faith, but I can promise you that it will be greater than had you gone to Luxor physically, for you will receive it spiritually. You are not far from me. You are not far from the ascension, if you will only now begin to control your feelings always, and for God's sake, and for the sake of your ascension, not for the sake of your ego. The ego ought not to be smashed and destroyed, but to be remolded. It is this which we ask. We do not ask the destruction of the individual, but the changing of the individual. We do not ask that that change shall be one of full chastisement, for joy is well permitted among those who follow the sacred path. But the joy can be more full in all when they surrender unto God the gift of self which they received from God. For as they surrender, then it becomes their own. It has been said before that only that which man gives away does he retain, and of a truth does this apply to his own life. To whom shall each man surrender? Only unto God. But God is in all, and let none feel that by loving man free they are sinning, for love is universal, and love is always accompanied by judgment, by righteousness, by purity, and by the expansion of the flame. Enoch. Ooh. Encouragement unto the God-seeker and the ritual of the ascension. El Melchizedek, Malkuth, Ruah. You are spirit, not matter. Blaze forth. You are spirit. Blow with me. Flame command. It is finished. Peace be unto you. I, Serapis, in the name of the Great White Brotherhood, have spoken.